We'll start first with a keyword search. And keyword searches they can be really great and they can be really, really annoying. And I'll give you an example. In prepping for this evening, there was a particular piece that I wanted to show you, and I'll show it to you when we go through here. And I thought to myself, well, I know it was made in Germany, and I know it's a wristwatch. So what I was going to do, and what you might be inclined to do initially, is go to the search area here, where you see that, and I typed in Germany wristwatch. Now the problem with this, and this is something you need to bear in mind when you're using our database, is what this will tell me is it will give me every single object in my collection that has both the word Germany and the word wristwatch in it, which is not exactly what I was looking for. So what I end up with is things like watch bands, because it has the word wristwatch in it. So the problem I've got right now is now I have to narrow that. So if you're doing a search on this and you want to do it by keyword, you always want to use the word and. So if you're looking for two things that are in one object, whether it's a Seth Thomas clock or a Germany wristwatch or a Patek Philippe wristwatch, you always want to use and. Because by using the and in the keyword, what it does is it only brings up those objects that have both of those things in it. So now instead of every object that has the word Germany in it and every object that has the word wristwatch in it, I now have only objects that have the word Germany and wristwatch. So that's one of the best ways to use the keyword search, is always remember the and. And that's sometimes I forget to do on a regular basis. But you can see what we're searching through here. There's over 30,000 records that we have uploaded. Every week, my staff and volunteers here at the museum are updating this database. And every week we update the online version of this database. So this database is being improved and updated literally every week with more information, with more images. To give you some perspective, when I started here in 2007, our database had 1,500 photographs in it. We had over 11,000 objects and 1,500 photographs. Today we have close to 13,000 objects, but we have almost 20,000 photographs. So we've been gradually, more than gradually, increasing the amount of photography that we're adding to these records, which from the standpoint of you as a researcher on the outside, or a scholar, or simply an enthusiast or a collector, what we're trying to do is make this database more comprehensive for you, provide a lot more information there. One of the things we've also been, well, let me move on. We'll look at a different record real quick, and then I'll come back to this. So here's the wristwatch I was looking for. The number you see here, and you'll see these numbers with all these are what we call accession numbers or object ID numbers. They're essentially inventory numbers. They're how we keep track of everything here at the museum. It's very funny. Someone will say to me, hey, can I get a photograph for the bulletin of that wristwatch, that Patek Philippe? And I'll always ask them, what is the number? Because we have so many pieces in the collection that without having the specific number to use as a reference to find it, it can be very, very difficult. So that's what you're seeing here. And then the name, what you're seeing here is wristwatch. For us in the museum collections nomenclature, the wristwatch is simply what we call the object name. So while you may have variations on things like there's mantle clocks and desk clocks and shelf clocks, museum nomenclature is very narrow. And we've modified the nomenclature a little bit in our collections database to expand it. But we try to keep it fairly narrow and straightforward. So wristwatch. So if you come to this, I click on that one, and it opens up an object window. Now every one of these pieces, all the objects on our database, if they're here and we own them, are in this database. Now we don't have images for every single object. We have images for most of them, but not every one. And then on some of the images we have are older ones. Collections databases, the museum has been here since 1977. So the collections database, as you might call it originally, were 3x5 cards that are in a file cabinet behind my office over here that we don't use anymore. But those were the collection records in 1977. As time came on and as things became computerized and automated, different software programs, MS-DOS programs, AS400 programs, Windows 95, you name it, new software was used. And as over time, information was entered into this. And as you transferred from one system to another, as you upgraded from one software to another, sometimes that data was lost or sometimes the data was corrupted. And so a lot of these records, as we've discovered, as my staff and volunteers here who work on this have discovered, a lot of the data has been corrupted and we've had to go back and almost rewrite some of these. And it's nobody's fault. It's simply the result of this constant overlaying of systems. And after a while, it can get very difficult to keep track of all of that. The other challenge I will give you when we work on these, for this is a great example, this object I've pulled up here, this Lasher & Company World War II era Luftwaffe pilot's watch. It's a wonderful piece in the collection and a lot of fun to play with and look at and examine. But one of the things that we today in 2015 going on 16 museum work have to remember is that when this watch came into the collection in 1982 and was entered into the database in 1982, the person doing that work didn't have access to the internet, didn't have access to the immediacy of information that we have access to today. So they would have had to search for every single object in the library or in scholarly publications or in patent records to get any kind of information they could. And so oftentimes the records are not as complete as they could be today simply because I can type this into Google and discover anything I want. Or as you can see here, I can go to forumswatchuseek.com and find a whole thread on this particular watch. So we try to be really cautious about being too critical of the early collection records that we have, while at the same time taking advantage of the resources we have today with the internet to provide even further research on these objects. When you come to an object record on the collection database like this, what you're going to see is usually the images will be on the left-hand side. You can simply click on those images for a larger image, and it'll bring that up for you. These images are, I believe, 600 by 400. They're 72 DPI. They're not publishable in any respect. You could certainly use them on an internet or a web page, and you're welcome to do that with our images. We only ask that you credit where you've got them from. And then you can cycle through the images for each object. So we try to make sure as we go along that what we've got are both movement shots as well as face shots and dial shots and complete shots. That way you can see the whole package of each thing. On some of these, and I'll show you this a little bit later, you're also going to see videos. This is a video of this watch running. Which is, some of these watches are amazing. The minute you pull them out to photograph them, they just want to get going and start running. And when we do that, we try to capture that because we want to make sure, I'm going to get rid of that stupid ad, because we want to make sure that that you can see that while it's in process. So it's kind of a fun thing to do. So that's the keyword search. So let me back up again. Keyword search, the thing to remember is always use and. So if you're going to do a keyword search, use and. That way, you're always going to be able to find the two things you want. The other thing you're going to need to know about using the keyword search is if you want to look for something, we'll back up to what I said about not using and. If I simply type in Seth Thomas, what I'm going to get is every single record I have that has the word Seth in it, and every single record I have that has the word Thomas in it, not necessarily just Seth Thomas items. If I want just Seth Thomas items, I need to make sure I put this then in quotes, just like this. Once it's in quotes, then all I will get are Seth Thomas objects. You saw it, you might have seen I had a previous search here, Seth Thomas and alarm. So we'll just run that one. You'll notice I used both of them. So I used Seth Thomas and I used alarm. So what I've got are every single Seth Thomas reference, which also has an alarm. So we'll click on one of these. So here's a little Seth Thomas travel clock. So you can use those in coordination with one another. If you want an exact phrase, so if you want Seth Thomas, or if you want Patek Philippe, you need to put that in quotes. And then you can add with the and anything else you'd like to look for with that. That's how the keyword search essentially works. A very useful way to do it. It's fairly quick. You tend to have to cycle through a lot of things if you do that. Now there's another way you can do that, another way you can search this, and that's called the advanced search, which is a little more complicated, but kind of uses the same concept as using the and. We're just loading it into the individual descriptions or place of origin or collection or material. So if you're looking for an object that is a wristwatch that was, let's say, made in Germany, and let's see, what else can we put on here? Let's see, it doesn't really matter. Well, we'll just do that. So that's another way. We'll do that. We'll do a search, and what we get are those same records. We actually got fewer records this time because we typed in a little differently. But we ended up with 7 results. These are all of our wristwatches that were produced in Germany. I really wish I had more, but this is what we've got right now. But again, it's another way to do it. Now, the other neat thing about this database, and this is just a recent thing, well, I'll hold off on that because it's more fun later. The most fun way to do this, and this is what I do every morning, I think, practically when I come into work, is we'll come back to the home page here. So this is the very first page you'll see when you come to the database. I love this little one. It's called Random Images. If you're just looking for something interesting or you just want to kind of browse the collection, this is the best way to do it. Because once you hit Random Images, that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get a selection of images that are just selected out of the database that you can just kind of browse through. If you want to see more images, you just click down here where it says View More Images. It'll bring up another random selection of images. When you click on this image, it'll bring just that image up for you. If you want to see what that object is, you just see this where it says View Catalog Record here at the bottom. You click on that, and it takes you to the page for that specific object. So this just tells you the information we have on this particular object. We can go back to our random images again, and you can just kind of do that all day. You can just browse through this and find all kinds of things that are just a lot of fun. We have all kinds of great stuff in here. And again, the images are there for you to look at for as much of this as we can. So that's probably the most fun way. Keyword search is fairly quick, but you tend to have to go through a lot of things. Sometimes you'll end up with a lot of results. The advanced search is a way for you to narrow a lot of those results down so that you end up with very specific items that are in the range of what you're looking for. The random images search is just kind of the fun way to do it, quite frankly. It's a way to just kind of enjoy looking at the collection. And I'll restate again, there's more on display, so to speak, or on exhibit in this database than there is in the museum. So it's a nice way to take an opportunity to look at things that you won't be able to see if you come to the museum necessarily. Or if you're conducting research on a particular maker and you see that we have, half a dozen watch movements by a particular maker, but they're not on exhibit, it's a way for you to kind of narrow down your research if you want to pay us a visit and kind of examine those watches more closely. It's just a nice way to do that. And all of the catalog numbers are there for you, so if you need to give us a reference for that, you can. Something we've just started adding, and it's really kind of the future development and growth of this collection, of this database, is our archive module. And the archive module we're working on right now with Sarah Dockery, who's our library supervisor. She's in charge of that. And what we're doing is we're taking our finding aids from the archive records and we're putting them into PastPerfect as well. Now, we're not putting in scans of the actual objects, but what we are putting in are detailed listings of what's in each collection. So if you do a keyword search, everything that's in this collection, this is the Christopher St. Daniel's sundial collection, which is an amazing collection of sundial material that recently was donated to us by him. What you're going to see is anytime you search any of these things, it's going to show up. We also have all the different subjects for this particular collection, and then the box, what we call container listings, are here. So what's in box 1? Well, Victoria Cross and George Cross dial is in box 1. Another thing in box, what are the odds that I would click on the same one twice? I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word, but you can see everything that's in every box is listed in the database. So if you do a search, if we go into keyword search and we type in nautical and we type in sundial for our keyword search, remember that I'm using and, will actually come up with the Christopher St. Daniel sundial collection. So it will tell us that somewhere in this collection is information on that. And so that's another way that we're kind of enhancing the online collections database, as well as access to everything we have. The museum collection is amazing, and I'm not going to argue that the three-dimensional collection we have isn't. But what is actually just as amazing, if not more so in some cases, is what we have in our archives. And our goal right now is to make as much of that accessible to our visitors and to our members as possible through things like this collections database, through scanning objects when we can do so safely, so that everybody can access what we have, know what we have, and be intelligent researchers when they come to the museum or the library to conduct scholarly research or study objects or particular aspects of horology. So by adding the archive module to this, we're actually just completely and adding a whole other level to this that we think is going to grow over time. It's time consuming to do the archive, almost much more so than it is to do the objects. Sarah's been very lucky to have volunteers and folks who've been willing to help her with that, who have knowledge of archival record keeping and can help her enter this in. I think it's important for me to state that the museum and the library function very well. One of the main reasons we function so effectively is because we have incredibly dedicated staff, people and volunteers here who dedicate an awful lot of their time and effort to making sure that the information that we have is the best it can be and to make sure that it's accessible to as many people as possible.